it must mean it's time for Pet Files Ask the Vet.
It is time for Pet Files Ask the Vet, underwritten by the Millerton Veterinary Practice. Traditional small animal medicine and surgery, chiropractic, laser therapy, acupuncture, and Chinese herbal medicine. 518-789-3440. MillertonVet.com. With us, Dr. Carolyn Cannon, owner and chief vet at the Millerton Veterinary Practice. Hello, Dr. Cannon.
Happy spring.
Happy spring.
Happy past the solstice spring.
Did you pass the equinox spring?
That's the equinox, sorry.
You can't have the solstice yet.
That's right.
However, between now and the solstice is when it gets light and everything. Once we get to the solstice, it's ending already.
We don't want to think about that.
No, we don't. This is
the best time.
This is the perfect time. And because it's the perfect time, and I can't find my glasses. Okay, Lane in Millbrook has a question, and that question is, my cat Francie is 10 years old. She's a long-haired black cat. For the past few weeks, I've noticed what looks like dandruff when I brush her. I don't really see it unless I'm brushing her. Then it kind of comes up on the surface. Can a cat get dandruff? If so, can you use regular dandruff shampoo on them? Is there something I can use to get it off her fur?
Lots of questions there. Cats can get dandruff. If we're describing dandruff as flakes of skin in the fur or in the hair, then they can get dandruff. Many different causes of dandruff and a couple of different kinds of dandruff. So there's some distinction between the small flakes and the large flakes. So large flakes of skin coming off, usually associated with inflammation, but sometimes the small flakes can be as well. So it can be, cats can get dandruff when the air is super, super dry and their skins aren't producing enough oils. Sometimes when they age, their blood supply to the skin isn't as good as when they're younger and definitely get flaky skin easier. Sometimes the skin isn't producing enough oils, or sometimes the skin's producing too much oil in response to inflammation. That you can influence that with diet. Their general health should be good, and reducing inflammation. So it sounds pretty simple, and with people, I think we use dandruff shampoos, but it's not something that you'd want to use with a cat. Number one, if your cat's used to being bathed, then absolutely shampoo, but you want a medicated shampoo that's specifically for cats, because of the pH and the drying capabilities of human shampoo. Could make things much worse. But also, you want to have something that's targeted potentially toward your own pet, so that in sort of looking at the skin and seeing what might be the cause of the dandruff. So if there are little scabs on the skin, then that may mean a dermatitis as well. So an indication for bathing might be a superficial skin infection, and then you would use an antibacterial shampoo, so et cetera, et cetera. So it's a bit complicated, more complicated than you would think. Definitely check for oily skin, because that may mean seborrhea, which is treated in a different way than just plain dry skin. What I can say is the safest thing to do is the omega-3 fatty acids that are usually in fish oil, fairly easy to give to cats. And the reason you give the oil is not to make the skin oilier, but it is to reduce inflammation. So omega-3 fatty acids will reduce inflammation in the skin, in the blood vessels, in the heart. Lots of good side effects of omega-3s.
Do you prefer the kind that you squirt or chew, or? I just discovered that there's the chewables, the capsules. That's what I'm trying to say.
So the capsule that you can twist the end off and squirt in the food, is that what you're?
Well, I have found that it comes in either a squirt bottle where it's just the oil, or maybe that's just for dogs.
No, that's for cats as well, or a twist-off capsule.
Okay.
You could give those capsules to cats too, but they're pretty big size.
And separately, the capsule, I just I didn't realize it, but they're allegedly chewable.
Some of them are, yeah.
I use the word allegedly.
Right. I know. That's so funny
really?
that things are made as, chewable medications for animals in general, but cats specifically.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
These are palatable, right?
Right.
The food isn't even palatable
I know.
half the time.
Marketing. Okay, so I was just curious about that.
Yeah, but absolutely, really, there are no contraindications to trying some fatty acids. So I would do that first for Francie.
Okay. And I just like that there are so many different types of dandruff. But just vaguely, if it looks like that, she didn't say it looks like big dandruff. She just regular dandruff. So.
And didn't mention anything about the oil.
Yeah.
So, and she's, I think she said she's an older cat.
Right.
So
that's reasonable. And it's winter. And heat just does all sorts of things.
Exactly. So if you've got a wood stove and a super dry heat, sometimes you'll get flakes from that, and you'll see it more on a black cat. So getting it off, I usually just use, excuse me, you can do a bath, but if you're brushing, and after the brushing, I'll use just a damp paper towel to try to work out some of the flakes.
I know what you mean. All right. Here we go. Asla from Canaan in Montreal for now. Me and Bree, my Frenchie, are staying with friends in Montreal for a while. Being away from home is stressing Bree out. I tried to get her to sleep in the nice warm living room, but the only place she wants to sleep is the floor next to my bed, which gets cold at night. Which is the lesser evil, the physical stress of being cold or the emotional stress of separation? Bree sleeps in a dog bed, but it's still cold in the room, and she's 8, by the way.
So I would think that the best thing to do would be to have Bree sleep near you. It's going to have her be more relaxed, and clearly that's where she wants to be. And then you can just, if you can't have her on the bed or in the bed, excuse me, then just a little dog bed with sides that come up, have good padding between Bree and the floor, and the cold floor, and a little cheapo fleece blanket is all you need. Roll it up, make a little C shape with it inside that bed, and it'll make a nice nest for her. She can curl up in that, and she'll be really warm, and maybe even cover her up if she likes it.
And what is your feeling about hot water bottles?
Hot water bottle's fine. It doesn't hold its heat very, very long.
For long, yeah.
There's no problem. No heating pad.
No.
But a hot water bottle would be fine.
Did I just sound like the British Parliament? No. You
want to wrap it up. You want to wrap it up well. The thing about water is when it cools off and it's inside rubber or plastic, it draws heat from the body back into the water. So
how about forget that?
Probably not a good idea. Yeah, it's like being on a waterbed that's not heated. I don't know if you've ever done that, but boy, you feel like a clam in about 2 hours.
Waterbeds are another thing that sound like a really fun thing, and depending on your age, they're terrifically fun until you start feeling like a clam. Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Or it leaks.
Oh,
been there, done that.
Yeah, been there, done that too. Mallory in Pine Plains, is it safe to leave a sweater on a cat unsupervised? My old Tabby really loves to wear her sweater, but sometimes I get worried she could get tangled in it somehow. Am I being silly?
Those old cats are so adorable in their sweaters. And some of them really do like to be in a sweater, but the problem being that those toenails, especially older cats who are cold all the time, they have these long toenails that don't wear and they don't break, and they get stuck in sweater material. And so that's dangerous and can be really painful if you have a kitty who gets her foot stuck up on her side inside one of those blankets and can't move. So it's sort of a judgment call. If you've got a really old cat who's not moving around much and you've got a fleece, kind of a fleecy sweater that the toenail is unlikely to get stuck in, and you keep those toenails clipped short, and maybe it's got some Velcro keeping it closed so that if she gets stuck, it'll come off, then I'd say yes. Otherwise, I'd say probably, in most cases, it's probably not a good idea to keep a sweater on when they're not supervised. Because so many things can happen.
So,
if same thing with a collar. If you've got a collar on that isn't a quick release. It's amazing what they can get into when you're not there. as far as trouble.
No, you're entirely right. It's just these are things you just can't you can't even think of the things that can somehow.
You can't think of the things unless you've been working at a veterinary hospital for 30 years and
Exactly.
you see
In
all
which
that.
case, it's just you have a list and you can
and
dine
you
out
couldn't
on the
even
stories.
imagine.
Right. So, and that's something that just people at home should know, that really basic stuff is good. Be aware of who's wearing what and doing what, and
Yeah, it was a great question, actually.
yeah.
But I think that, you can figure out. I mean, I would definitely rather they have a little fleece sweater on with some Velcro closure than a heating pad.
Right.
We don't want to do the heating pad thing because it's too dangerous. And cats do get cold, and, sometimes it's hard to leave the heat way up for your 18, 19, 20-year-old cat. You're heating the whole house for this little cat all day.
Yes.
You can do other things and just try to keep them warm.
But some cats who shall remain nameless and who are still destructive even in their dotage have different heat registers. You're rotating heat registers that the nameless cat has decided to. It's almost 32 minutes here and 15 minutes here, and then I will.
He's got it all worked out.
Totally. And God forbid we turned up the heat or down. It would just distress everything.
Mm-hmm.
All right. There are about 62 million, just so you know, I'm Andrew in Fort Myers, Florida. There are about 62 million questions in this next question. So.
Okay.
Can
we do one at a time-ish?
Yeah, we're going to have to.
Okay.
I don't even know. All right. We'll start at the very beginning. A very good place to start. I'm dog sitting an old black lab called Greta right now, and I have my own dog with me, Jack, a 2-year-old husky mix. I was warned that Greta has a bad drool problem, thick, ropey, constant drool that I'd have to wipe off every few hours. Her owners told me the vet doesn't know the cause. Okay, now, lots of questions. The dogs share a water bowl which Greta's drool gets into. Is that safe for Jack?
So if the vet doesn't know the cause, presumably then there's been a good oral exam on Greta, including her tonsils. Make sure she doesn't have anything that's painful. So tonsillitis, pharyngitis, meaning the back of the throat being red, any kind of little tumor under her tongue, problems with her teeth, ulcerations from the teeth on the gums, those kinds of things can make a dog drool.
You know what?
Yeah.
I'm going to stop because I'm reading on in the questions, and a moment, please. Another thing Greta's owners warned me about was that she eats her own droppings. At first, that proved to be true. I feed Jack a raw diet of meat, vegetables, and fruit, and I started feeding this to Greta too, instead of the grain-free kibble her owners feed her. By day 3 of eating Jack's diet, Greta had stopped the disgusting habit we don't need to mention again, and her drool had gone down by 50%. After 2 weeks, she's barely drooling at all. Obviously, the diet is the reason. But
wonderful.
Do dogs eat their own droppings because they're not getting enough nutrients or some other reason? Could there be an allergy to kibble that would cause drooling? Or is it more likely that the fresh fruit and veg in the raw diet was what she needed? Andrew, Fort Myers.
So the first question was about sharing the water bowl. And
right.
Dogs sharing water bowls, typically the things to be concerned about would be parasites. Sometimes there are parasite eggs in the mouth, and of course infectious diseases. And so those are things to think about as far as having your dog share a water bowl with another dog that you're not familiar with. So making sure. So the one thing that I would do, if I was bringing my dog to another dog's home, is to make sure that dog has been healthy, had a good checkup, and had deworming if needed, at least a parasite stool check. So Greta sounds like she's eating a lot of stool. It's called coprophagy, excuse me, and it's not an uncommon situation with dogs. Some dogs will do that we think maybe because the stool is not digested well, and so they are eating it. Other dogs will do it because they were raised in a very close environment, and dogs like to be clean, and so they'll follow the mother's lead with all the puppies and pick up the stools and eat them. So oftentimes it is. Some of the very best, well-fed dogs will still eat their stool. It usually, in my experience, I believe it's usually a behavior problem. And so that is something that can be dealt with in other ways. But this is great news about Greta. So something about her diet was causing her either to have stomach upset or esophagitis, which would cause drooling, or perhaps a hypersensitivity or quote-unquote allergy to the food that she was eating, which might have actually caused some inflammation. So we've got to know, we know that the drool has to come from somewhere. So the drool is being overproduced because there's irritation. And the irritation may be from the diet, right? So irritation, inflammation from the diet she was eating. So she might have had stomatitis, meaning inflammation in her mouth, pharyngitis, tonsillitis, that kind of thing. So this is wonderful that she isn't doing all that drooling, and hopefully you'll see all kinds of improvement in her over time. The thing about raw food I've talked about before on this show is that it is metabolized much slower than processed food, and so it tends to normalize the insulin levels, which can help with reduce inflammation. It is important that the diet be balanced. So we have to be super careful about making sure that these homemade diets are balanced. And I find that the best, easiest way to do that, of course, you can get a veterinary nutritionist to balance your food. Now, there are nutritionists who will take what you're feeding and have you add some various other foods in order to balance the food better, even if you're feeding raw food. And then there's also a company called Balance It. So it's balanceit.com. And Balance It now has a service that you can use if you've got a dog with no health problems or a dog with health problems. And you're putting in what you're feeding, and they help you to balance the diet from there. And they will actually make a supplement specifically for your dog to make sure that their diet is balanced. So I have to throw that in there because we're seeing, look at what we're seeing now with unbalanced foods with this dog food issue with cardiomyopathy.
Yeah, you also you got and talk about that for a moment.
So I believe that how this came about was that holistic veterinarians started to talk about grain-free foods, meaning lower the starch in your dog's diet. So we don't want a lot of soy, corn, and grains as the top ingredients. And so all of the dog food companies jumped on board with the title of grain-free. And in order to make that happen, instead of putting more meat in the food, which is expensive, then, everybody went to this, how can we do better sources of protein from vegetable protein like beans and peas, etc. And so now everybody is on the grain-free bandwagon. But now we're seeing a problem with some dogs getting heart problems with grain-free food. The link appears to be potentially, nobody knows for sure, but lentils, so red lentils in particular, but lentil protein, pea protein, maybe potato protein. But the jury is still out, and the research is not done on why.
And it's going to take time to do that. And I think I'm just going to jump in here for 1 second. When you see humans and the strangest diets that they get on that end up causing imbalances. One of my favorite things that I saw a couple of weeks ago was, I love influencers. And there's this vegan influencer who was caught eating a piece of fish, and her followers revolted. But I just, as silly as that sounds to me in my old age. It's so easy to think that you're doing a good thing or following a trend that's actually pretty that has unintended consequences.
Right. So so what I'm hearing here is a raw diet, meat, vegetables, and fruit. But giving too much fruit, number one, is going to be too much quickly digested sugar, and also if you're giving raw meat and you're not giving enough calcium, you're going to run into major problems with bones, with the dog's physical bones. And growth and joints and all kinds of problems. So we need to really be sure that you're just not reading what other lay people are saying on the internet, and that you're balancing your dog's diet or getting a good quality commercial raw food.
Right, and which then brings to the fact that it's wonderful. I don't know how long this dog sitting. This is what Andrew's doing is great, but we don't know how long he's dog sitting for. And then Greta's owners are going to come back, and then they're going to have to either adopt.
Yeah, and they may very well do that, which would be really great. But getting some help from somebody, either from a holistic veterinarian or go on Balance It and check that out, and make sure that Greta's people are okay with her eating raw food as well, presumably. But I think probably what it's done is to lower the inflammation, in her stomach, esophagus, mouth, and that's why she's not drooling, which is fantastic, and she'll probably live longer for that reason. But the stool eating is another issue, too. Some dogs actually, when they're on raw diet, do eat the stool. So I think that's fantastic, and just balance that diet.
Right. And that's... I have one who is more apt to do that now on raw diet than she ever was before.
Eating the stool, yeah.
So it's always a mixture. Have you used mild skepticism? Have you used that site yourself? Is it better to use that site through the auspices of a veterinarian?
I've known people who've done it with success, but there are a couple of veterinary nutritionists, especially at the vet schools, I believe, who will take calls and or they'll have online. They have forms that you can fill out,
right,
and it's a couple of $100, I think. And I don't remember whether you need to do that through your vet or not. There was one through the University of Tennessee. I think there still is, who will formulate a diet for you. If you can't figure that out, ask your vet to find out for you.
Because the only reason that I would say that is, in a lot of cases, you don't know what you don't know, and with animals, it kind of all looks the same. In other words, it's my dog is energetic. Not it's harder to describe. I would think.
Yeah, and we're saying, we don't. Many people say we don't balance our diet every day. Well, we eat a much wider. At least if you're a healthy person, you eat a wide variety of foods, and we aren't dogs. But and you don't necessarily every day have to balance your dog's diet. But by far, for the most part, it needs to be balanced because you need all those micronutrients for your body, for your cells to work, and your mitochondria to be efficient.
And to do its job.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cannon.
Thank you.
This has been Pet Files Ask the Vet, underwritten by the Millerton Veterinary Practice, 518-789-3440, millertonvet.com.
And, of course, you can hear the rebroadcast here on Robin Hood Radio and also online, robinhoodradio.com. Click on On Demand, click on Pet Files, Ask the Vet.